Nigeria, there are 4 recognized ways through which 2 or more persons can come together to co-own a property, and namely there are joint tenancy, tenancy in common, tenancy by entirety, and family ownership. Each type of tenancy has its own legal implication, but in this video today we'll be talking specifically about joint tenancy and tenancy in common. In my previous video, I talked about couples coming together to co-own a property and the implications that is involved when 2 couples come together to co-own a property. But in this video, we'll be talking about explaining deeper the meaning of joint tenancy and tenancy in common. In case you're meeting me for the first time, my name is Chris Asike. I'm a real estate consultant based in the city of Port Harcourt, and it is my job to assist my clients with making the right and the best real estate transaction. And in this YouTube channel, I educate, inform, and enlighten everybody that want to invest in real estate on everything that they need to know before going into real estate. If you are new to this channel, please support the growth of our channel by subscribing to our channel. Click on the bell notification so you'll be notified when we post new videos, and also do well to give this video a thumbs up. Now let's talk about joint tenancy. When a property is co-owned as joint tenant, it entails that each tenant owns the whole of the property just like the other tenants, and they all have equal rights over the whole of the property. None of the co-owners have a separate share of the interest of the property. No joint tenant can claim any portion of the property as his own. The joint tenants hold their interest as undivided shares, and they are deemed as one in the eyes of the law. No joint tenant can dispose or sell any part of the property without the consent of the other tenants who are also co-owners of that property. Before they can do that, they must first of all sever the joint tenancy before they can do that. The most significant implication of joint ownership is what is referred to as right of survivorship, which simply means that when a co-owner dies, his share of the property will be taken over automatically by the surviving owners. For example, if A, B, and C owns a property and A dies, his share of the property will be taken equally by the surviving owners, which in this case is B and C, and not his heirs. His heirs doesn't have any right over this property, and A cannot include the property that he co-owned with B and C in his will, because the property is not solely owned by him. Now, what happens if the co-owners of a property, if they died at the same time? If maybe they died in a car accident, what happened to the property? Who is going to inherit the property? If the co-owners of a property, if they died at the same time and they cannot really differentiate who died first, what is going to happen is that the elder among the 2 of them will be considered as the one who died first, and the heir of the younger one is going to inherit the property. That is, if in a joint tenancy agreement the 2 of the co-tenants they died at the same time, then it will be considered that the heir died first and the children of the younger ones is going to inherit the property. Now, this right of survivorship is exactly what distinguishes a joint tenancy and the second one, which I'm going to explain, which is a tenancy in common. Now, in the case of a tenancy in common, each owner of the property, they have their own distinguished share of the property. In a tenancy in common, 5 people can come together to co-own a property, each of them owning 20% share of the property. Now, in the case of a tenancy in common, if one of the owner dies, his or her share will be passed on to his surviving heirs, which is not the same thing in the case of a joint tenancy. In a joint tenancy, when any of the owner die, his share of the property will be passed on to the surviving owners. But in the case of a tenancy in common, if a co-owner dies, his share will be passed on to his heirs. Now, in the case of a tenancy in common, a co-owner can wield his or her share of a property to his children, because that share belongs to him solely. In a tenancy in common, a co-owner, he can own 20%, he can own a different percentage of a property, which is not the same thing in a joint ownership. In a joint ownership, they own equal rights, but in a tenancy in common, it is not like that. In a tenancy in common, one can own 50%, while other 5 persons can own little percentage in a tenancy in common. And if any of the co-owner die, he can pass on his rights, he can pass on the share which belongs to him to his children. But that cannot be done in a joint tenancy, because in a joint tenancy the right of survivorship applies, but it does not apply in a tenancy in common. Now, it is important we know that by default, when 2 or more persons co-own a property, like when a husband and a wife co-own a property, by default it is regarded as joint tenancy. So when you see a deed of conveyance bearing the name of 2 persons as a co-owner of the property, by default it means that if one of the owner die, the surviving owner will be the sole owner of the property. By default, whenever you see any deed of assignment bearing the name of 2 persons, if one die, the remaining owners that are surviving are the owner of that property, and that property cannot be willed. Now, the only way whereby 2 or more persons can co-own a property and it is not going to be joint tenancy but tenancy in common, where anybody can will his or her own share of the property to his children, or can sell his or her own share of the property to a third party, is if in the title document it is indicated words of 70 are used in such a way that it is no longer joint tenancy but it is tenancy in common. And such words of 70 that makes it tenancy in common is when such a word like in equal shares, those are words of 70. All these words of 70, when they are used in a title document, then it is no longer joint tenancy, it is now tenancy in common. And each owner in this case can will his or her own share of a property to his children. So that is it about joint tenancy and tenancy in common. If you have gotten something new, if you have learned something new from this video, please do well to subscribe to our channel. Click on the bell notification so you'll be notified when we post new videos, and also make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Till I come your way next time, my name is Chris Aseka.